All right, thanks, Pearl. Good afternoon, everyone. Thank you for joining us for this brand innovator session, focusing on C-suite and marketing leadership. I have the distinct pleasure today of introducing Emily Ketchen, who is indeed the CMO of the world's #1 PC manufacturer, Lenovo. I am Trevor Norrington. I am with Digital Trends Media Group. We are a collection of sites who seek to demystify the ever-advancing and changing worlds of tech, entertainment, and gaming. Enough of that. Emily, how's your Wednesday so far?
Wednesday is going super well. Thank you for asking. Things are good. Yeah. How about you?
We're halfway there. You know, it's been a great week. I'm excited to do this. We had a very nice introduction the other night, and I'm excited to get into this. So let's dig in. So what I for those of us who have been to these sessions before, there is a Q&A window, so we will have some time for some Q&A. So I'll be looking at questions that people input. But Emily and I did have an occasion to chat the other night, and I like agendas. Emily seems to like agendas too. So we decided we'd structure this conversation a little bit. We're going to talk first about Emily's personal leadership style. I think that as a tech CMO is an incredible journey and an incredible story to tell. So I want to spend some time having Emily share her journey. I think that's important. Secondarily, talking about her team leadership philosophy. Shockingly, Emily had a leadership philosophy pre-pandemic. She has one during the pandemic, and she'll have one post-pandemic. So we're going to talk a little bit about that. And then last, I think there's a lot of us who are going to be on here listening and want to understand, how is Lenovo continuing to be to be that #1 spot in a crowded marketplace, and how are they working towards maintaining and growing that share? So without further ado, as they say, let me dig in here. So Emily, you and I were talking the other day, and it was your self-reflection on the journey of becoming a CMO, and I think there was something that I found very interesting. You were talking about in an innate trait that you felt that you possessed that has allowed you to realize much of the success you've had in marketing. And I thought it was a really cool story, and I wanted you to share a little bit about that.
Yeah, I definitely will. Thank you for that. And I think, there are lots of different attributes that great leaders have. And I think on my journey, certainly there are two that I think they're partly innate, and they've also partly served me well. The first one is, and anyone who knows me well knows this, I am extraordinarily curious, and I ask a lot of questions. And I think it's a bit of a lifetime endeavor to always be a student of humanity, of people. It's a great match to marketing, where we're studying people and understanding what motivates and what really appeals to people, what changes their mind about something, how they make decisions. So that's one, and I can talk more about that a little bit. But the other thing that I really enjoy is listening, and trying to be an active and a great listener, trying to get to know people, spend time with them. And then I would say, on a broader frame, also listening very carefully to insights and understanding what customers are saying, what it is that they need. I'm also a preparer and a planner. I've been, in situations early in my career where I wasn't prepared, and that was ultra uncomfortable. And so I've learned over the years, you're well served to be prepared, to pay attention, to dig in. People appreciate it. And generally things work a little bit better when you're on the right pathway. The last thing I would say is coupling myself to great people and great leaders. There's a saying that says, if you want to go fast, go alone. But if you want to go far, go together. And I really believe that. It could take a little bit longer, but in the context of leadership, we're all on the journey together, and we're trying to meet the objectives that we have for the brand, for the team, for the organization, for our customers, together. And I think that's super important, Trevor, as we think about it. So I'll circle it back to being inherently ultra curious. Sometimes meetings go a little bit longer with me than intended. Ask a lot of questions. Being a great listener. So listening then once you've been curious, then the notion of sort of planning and preparation and being well prepared for those dialogues, and then making sure you bring everybody with you on that journey, right? It's not an organization of one. It's not a customer of one. Generally, there's groups. And so I think really being inclusive in that process is ultra important.
That's really cool. And I mean, I think, like, how do you find the time to nurture that curiosity? I mean, clearly you do it in every meeting, to your point, with asking lots of questions. I mean, is there other things you do in personal life? Is there other experiences you've had that have really created that curiosity in your life?
I think so. When I was growing up as a child, I was in a family that moved a lot. And, kids are born into their families. I don't have a lot of say about how that works. And my father happened to be in a role that moved us to a number of different countries and cultures. I've lived in 8 different countries in my life. And I think that always makes you a student of the country that you're in. We were not in a military situation, so I wasn't on a US base or like in the US culture. Also have a Scottish mother. And so there's this dynamic of you're not Scottish 100%, you're not American 100%. And let's use the example of Spain. Living in a country like Spain, I was also not Spanish. And so became a child of the third culture, which makes you very, very curious about your surroundings. You have to lean out to make friends, become part of your community at school. So those are the kinds of things I think that started early, Trevor, for me, in terms of curiosity, listening. What was important to these kids? What was important to people that I worked with early in my career, people that I met in college on the journey? And so I think that is something that I've had sort of in me, that I've cultivated and practiced. And it's easy for me to apply it in business, also specifically in technology, where things are changing all the time and they're very dynamic. It's very stimulating. And so I'm always asking questions and digging a little bit deeper. And I think also being prepared to be a student on your own, research on your own. How great is it to be able to duck into the internet and find something that you're curious about, or somebody pops a new acronym in? We're very famous in the technology world for what I like to call acronym soup. Your innate curiosity, or just your ability to stop somebody and say, hey, I haven't heard that acronym before. What does that mean? That confidence to say, I'm curious about that. What does that mean? Or the ability, Trevor, to say more about that. Tell me more about what you mean when you say that, so that you have the context. So I think just doing that. I also, on a personal level, have 2 Gen Zers in my house, 2 girls. And so constantly asking them questions. I think they find it annoying, really, frankly speaking. Okay. But that's another great way to study a particular audience, right? Is just to listen to what is culturally relevant and important to them. So I get to practice it, I would say, a lot, definitely.
That's fascinating. Just your life experience alone has created a constant need and nurture of your curiosity. I mean, it becomes one of those philosophical questions of, do you seek out those experiences, or do they find you? I think that's really, really interesting, and clearly part of your path that is so amazing, and we shared the other night. Thank you for that. We talked about this the other day too, is this idea of a long career, a global leadership role. And we were talking about this the other day, that hindsight is 20/20 as you look back now and look at, what is something that, what do you tell your girls now? What do you wish someone had pulled you aside and said, let me give you a little bit of advice about this, and pulled you aside and early on in your career journey? What are some pearls of wisdom you would share there?
Yeah, good questions. I will say the benefit of decades is a little bit of that ability to look over your shoulder and understand how all of the different pieces come together, whether you know it in the moment or you don't. And so the reflection around, what do I wish someone had told me early in my career? I think I'm fairly intense and I am ambitious. And I encourage women in particular to grow their ambitions, keep that flame alive and really pay attention to that and to nurture that desire to grow in their careers. That said, Trevor, what I would tell myself is go easy on yourself. Relax, take a breath. It doesn't all have to happen in the first decade of your career or even the second decade of your career. They're chapters in our lives. And, I have found that I have leaned in and out depending on what's happening in my own life. And I would say it's really important to pay attention to that. Every experience that you have accrues to the greater sum of what you become as an executive. And so relax, allow that journey to unfold and enjoy it along the way. Sometimes I feel like we're looking to the next or pushing for the next thing. And that can be a lot for a younger person starting in their career. I also think it's important to pay attention to this particular moment in time. We've all talked about the Great Resignation. It's important to think about, as a leader, how we inspire and grow people's careers and really lean into that. And I think that's something that I probably would have told myself to seek out a little bit more as a younger, up and comer maybe. And I think then also paying it forward and being there for colleagues and executives in their journeys. I think it's really important to mentor, to coach, to sponsor. And those are all very different things. But I think that is something I would have told myself to pay maybe a little bit more attention to, seeking out earlier on, so that you're not on that journey on your own, is what I would say there.
That's great. And I actually, in preparation for our meeting, I had the opportunity to obviously check out your LinkedIn profile. And there's a really great post that you've written, which is a day in the life of a tech CMO. And there's some really nice, again, some nice tidbits there in terms of what you do, because, it's global. Your job is global. So you're up very early and probably up very late. And there's this wonderful little period of time where you get to take the dogs for a walk that I encroached on the other day. My apologies, but I think it's a fascinating piece of, taking that time and I think it's the beauty of hindsight gives you that. So thank you for sharing that stuff. So I want to turn a little bit here and again encourage people to take a look at that post on Emily's LinkedIn profile. I thought it was great. One of the things that struck me was this idea of, how do you manage the tasks of a global CMO? I know that part of the answer is going to be hire a great team, and I think we would all encourage that. But again, at the end of the day, how do you manage and prioritize all of what is being asked of you across, I don't even know how many time zones you have to deal with in a day?
It's a great question, and I will say let's go to maybe the start of the journey. That was the reference point that you were making. I was reflecting a little bit on how this journey had unfolded, and I think one really important point there as well, Trevor, is I'm a huge believer in the Aristotle saying that it is about choice and not chance. And so owning your choices, owning the getting up early, owning the working late, owning the first step in our journey to the next level for each and every one of us means that there's a great deal of empowerment in understanding that it isn't by chance. And I also really encourage people in my organization, on my team, who I mentor, who I care deeply about, to really be tuned into choices that we make. And so for me, how did I do that? How did I make that step, to your question? First of all, I joined Lenovo in the pandemic. And so it was really important for me to start out with a very well articulated 30, 60, 90-day plan. I'm a huge fan of the 90-day plan. It's a great book. If you haven't read it and you're stepping into a new role, it will make a seminal change. I first picked it up when I was in the process of moving to Singapore and going to a new culture and a new area. And this philosophy of setting your priorities early in a brand new role is super, super important. And you use that tool in the 30, 60, 90-day plan really to vet your priorities, but to bring people into those priorities with you. You made such an astute observation, which is it's all about your team. It's all about your team, but also working with people who I had never met, hadn't met my bosses, hadn't met the people who I needed to influence, or people with whom I need to kind of draw out the priorities for the organization. And so I set those priorities really around kind of three areas. One was accelerating the modernization of our marketing organization by focusing deeply on insights. And I felt like that was something that we really needed to do. Insights in the context of being great listeners to our customers and to our constituents, understanding why we do what we do, updating things like our segmentation studies, thinking about how we get to customer decision journeys, really deeply understanding that process. And so pitching and putting together a center of excellence around insights that really encompasses every piece of the marketing value chain, from what you hear from a customer to developing that kernel of an insight that leads you to a great idea, vetting that idea with the audience, right? Making sure you're testing your creative against the people you're actually targeting it to. And then ultimately closing, no, I know, closing the loop to measure that. So that was first and foremost. Secondly, it occurred to me that with so much change in behavior around the pandemic and around the media landscape, we could actually benefit from a more overt hybrid strategy. A lot of brands are thinking about this and looking at it in the context of doing some media planning in-house, complemented by media planning with experts and agencies, and really putting together a hybrid strategy that delivers best-in-class results, also upskills the organization. Because if you're going to plan media and be able to really dig into your audiences yourself, it means there's an inherent upskilling that needs to happen, which has been a tremendous part of our journey. And then last but not least, the prioritization around being able to measure. It is a bit of the holy grail when it comes to marketing. How do you validate that the work that you're doing is landing and is effective and pushes all the way through against the objectives that you have? And so those three, I really set forth as I did a lot of listening early on. What did the organization need? What was working? What was not working? What did we want to do? It ended up being a pretty significant reorganization of our team. And so how to think about doing that when I hadn't met a single one of these team members in person was pretty interesting. And I think the beautiful thing is a lot of that came to fruition through technology. Here we are, you and I today in this incredible format. It's super personal. You're in my house, I'm in yours, and it's all enabled by technology. And so pushing on that and using that as a frame to really prioritize what I knew I wanted to do in terms of the organization, and then in terms of the outbound messaging around our products. And so prioritizing that, staying disciplined, sharing that vision, again, bringing people on that journey, helping them see the vision of what I had in mind for the organization, and hiring great people to help see that, and curating the tremendous talent already here that could see the vision and wanted to be a part and a piece of that. It's been immensely gratifying in the year that I've been here, for sure.
And I mean, and I think it's, the big piece there is the path. And I think that 90-day path is so important, and adjusting. And I think the other thing is that, people need markers on the path, right? And I think that's what's so interesting about what you talk about in terms of, your customer journey and hybrid planning and measurement. It's so important. One of the things that to me is part of why I got into this business is that I honestly do believe that advertising and marketing, by that extension, is a creative business. And we talked about this the other day, right? Is, you're in my home, but boy, can we solve a lot of problems in a room together and talking about things. And what about this? And getting in front of a whiteboard. And I've had some experience with that recently with our team. How are you doing that? I mean, look, you run a global organization. You obviously can't be in the room with everybody across the world, but how are you encouraging that creativity among team members? How are you nurturing that within your group?
It's such a great question. I think it's something that's been super interesting to watch unfold in the course of the pandemic. I think you know, Trevor, that I have a lot of agency experience. And so in an agency, it's all about gathering together and that beautiful creative process, whether it's brainstorming, whether it's the actual creative teams solving a problem through their own collaboration, their own brainstorming, their own adherence to the brief, right? Which is what drives a lot of the dialogue. Also having great, creative partnerships. I've enjoyed some incredible creative partners in my career who have really steered me the right way. So to your question as to how do you curate that? I think first and foremost, you have to be very much in touch with what motivates people. And so understanding that it's important to drive a culture of empathy and flexibility to draw out and foster that creativity. How do you get people together to ideate and bounce ideas and work with agency partners who can bring you the flame of an idea and how you grow it from there is incredibly important. And doing that in a work from anywhere remote environment, it's super important to stay connected. So a lot of it is open time for conversation, bantering back and forth, thinking about how we solve a problem or how we bring a brand new product to market or a brand new set of solutions or change the perception of our company creatively. It's extraordinary in terms of the landscape that we have because everything's changed. So what worked 5 or 6 years ago isn't going to work today. So making sure you're listening again to each other, to your customers, having an open, inclusive set of conversations about what drives creativity, what's interesting, what's happening in culture that you can be a part of. If you're looking to work with, let's just say, an influencer to help tell a brand story, how do you make that selection? What's important about those people who may be brand emissaries for you? How do you develop a great strategy around that? It requires a ton of collaboration, a ton of openness. I also am a firm believer in working with the experts. We have great agency partners who help us in the journey. And I think it's about working together. It's not they have to do this and you have to do that. Those lines have really blurred. I'm also really a believer in that a great idea can come from anywhere. It can come from a conversation. It can come from someone who's least, you might least expect it. And I think you have to hold yourself to a very, very high bar. Today, great CMOs, I think personally, are also great technologists. The ad tech stack, the MarTech stack, the sales tech stack. We talked about this a little bit, right? In terms of the tremendous technology that empowers, but it doesn't mean you get to lean back on creativity and a super interesting approach or something that makes people connect culturally and creates that desire and empathy and want to be part of your brand. It is super, super important and something that great CMOs are thinking about all the time. How do I authentically connect with my customers in a way that demonstrates the value of our brand and shows that we're here to help them achieve their goals? I think
it's great, and it's no small feat, and just I don't manage a global team, Emily, but early on in this crazy pandemic, my team started to we do three times a week, Monday, Wednesday, Friday, 20 minutes on the books. It's a virtual coffee. It's a water cooler chat. We sit around and it's 20 minutes. How's everybody's day? How was the weekend, et cetera, et cetera. And it's just that connection piece. I try really hard not to talk about work, and I accomplish it most of the time. Wednesdays are more work than Mondays and Fridays.
Yeah.
But it's that connection piece, and I think it opens the connections between us, and it really makes a difference. And it sounds like you're trying to do that on a much larger scale, but that's really, really cool. I appreciate that.
I have to say, I love that idea. That's a great, I haven't really done the virtual water cooler. That's a super, super good idea. I mean, we do maybe other things, and I think we dedicate a lot of time to the creative process, but I love the idea of just a free form. Yeah, 3 times a week where you
watching what's going on this weekend, and it's just, again, it's so much better in person, but it's just it's come as you are, and it's been a nice connection piece for us. So in any case,
love it.
Interesting one. I want to make sure we have enough time. There's a couple questions that have come in, and we have a couple more. You know, again, as the global PC leader, I think it's a very enviable position, and I think it's, and I'm sure that it's not one you want to give up anytime soon. So I think it's important for us to talk a little bit, because I know there's people who are going to be thinking about this. Is, you know, how is Lenovo doing what they're doing? And there's one thing that we touched on the other night, and it's, you know, consumer behavior is, you know, changing constantly. Well, in the last 2 years, it's probably changed tenfold. And I think there are definitely some things that are never coming back. And I really am interested to hear, what are some of the consumer behaviors or evolving consumer behaviors you guys are looking at to inform your work?
I think it's a great question, and it's a perfect, you know, segue from talking about how you can curate and drive great creativity. You have to really be thinking about what is informing the shift in consumer and in customer behavior. And I think there is no more seminal moment than today, having gone through the beginnings of this pandemic. And I don't know, and I can't see the future as to where it may take us, but it is an extraordinary catalyst for change. And so that is something that I think great marketers have to be super in tune with, in terms of what is happening with the customer dynamic, what is happening in the world. And so behaviors have changed immensely for both businesses and individuals. We've done quite a bit of research ourselves into this. And our research shows, Trevor, that 70% of people who work say that flexibility is one of the most important pieces of their work satisfaction, right? The ability to work from home. So this notion of a hybrid point of view from when I can decide that I want to be at home, and maybe for this portion of the week, but I want to be able to come in this portion of the week. And what does that look like in terms of what you're actually going to do? What will workspaces look like in the future? Will everybody have a cube? Probably not, right? There will be places you can touch down, but my sense is it'll be much more around collaboration. And so how does technology enable that? You've got to have a device that takes you from home to the office to anywhere. You're working on an airplane. I've got a lot of colleagues and team members who, in the course of the context of their day, may go take their children to Kumon. And they may wait in the parking lot, and they can be 100% effective taking calls, answering emails, because of the range of technology. And to your point, the shifting behaviors of being able to work from anywhere. For a while, Trevor, home was the nucleus. And you can imagine what that meant for CIOs. They're used to having everybody on site. They're used to being able to have some command and control over security. That's not the case any longer. I need you all to be effective. I need you all to be able to do that from home or from wherever you may be. And so being super in tune with our capabilities as a technology company and providing the payoff to our vision, which is smarter technology for all. It means smarter technology for all where you may be. So are you working from home, learning from home, in entertainment mode from home? We've all heard the sort of idea around binge watching, and I don't think that's slowed down at all, by the way. But being able to meet customers where they are, to be a step ahead, to help CIOs solve those myriad complex problems of how do I keep my workforce secure and up and running with devices and services and solutions that help them. What's super fascinating about that is today's ITDMs are being called upon to transform their companies. If you have a conversation with a car company, they'll tell you, I'm not just a car company, I'm a technology company, right? My car runs on this and runs on that. So if that CIO is super focused on transforming their organization into a technology powerhouse for what it is that they do, how can we help them to do that and keep them productive at the same time? There's this interesting duality in terms of what customer behaviors are driving. So you have the employee side of it, you have the consumer side of it, and then you have sort of the CIO layer, ITDM layer of how do we, help them as a great brand and as a technology provider be effective in what it is that they're setting out to do. And largely it's transformation themselves, also in small and medium businesses all day long. They're transforming their businesses. It used to be a restaurant, and now it's a fantastic technology powered serve in, out, pick up, drop off. I've got the Grubhub over here. I've got you picking up over here, and I'm managing all of that and giving you an exquisite culinary experience powered by technology, right? It's at the heart of everything that we're doing. And so I think that is how, in observing these shifting customer changes, we're really striving to meet them and exceed expectations where we can, and work with our customers. I think that's something that's really important about our brand, is holding hands with our customers and helping them solve those problems is very much germane to who we are as a brand. And so that's a big part of it. And driving, collaboration tools so that people can stay in touch and work in the ways that work best for them.
It's a big task, to be sure. And I mean, and to your point, I think the rate of acceleration is it's not slowing down. It's not. It's simply not. So I want to pivot on a little bit, and there's a question that's come in that touches on this. Is, as you've talked a lot about your agency partners and the value that they provide, there's vendors out there. There's other media partners that you might connect with. How do those media partners, what can they bring to your team? I know, as much as we would like for all have a one-on-one with you, Emily, you're probably a busy lady, right? But how can we differentiate ourselves with your team? What value can we provide to your team that's going to help people stand above, and most importantly, help you guys do your job better, right? That's the point.
I love it. And it's a great question. So it won't surprise you that from a marketing perspective, we're looking for partners who are curious and are great listeners and are, to some degree, risk takers, right? Helping us to do those programs and projects that may be first in class, or allow us to take an intelligent risk from which we can learn from. I also think we as an organization deeply value inclusion and diversity. And so we're looking to work with partners and customers who embody our values and who are very much aligned to the way that we want to do business and to the way that we want to honor diversity. And I think also, if you hear the line "smarter technology for all," that it very much harkens to this idea of democratization of technology and making sure that we're working with partners who espouse that and who see that as important for them as well. And I think that's really important to us as a brand, and those who have a vision around diversity and inclusion and who would espouse some of our goals around that in terms of where we see ourselves as an organization and holding ourselves to that bar. I think that would be the best advice I could give folks around how best to think about us as a brand and to partner with us. And I think more and more, Trevor, those pieces of organizations and companies and what drives and delivers an excellent and differentiated ethos is what's really important. And we hold ourselves to a high bar there and expect our partners to help us and even nudge us. I love it when someone pokes and makes us do something better, or thinks, has us think of something that's something we haven't thought of before, or puts us in a situation where we're thinking differently and we're open and we're curious and we're thoughtful about programs that we may want to come into, or how they may solve a problem. It can be as simple as that. So yeah, I think those are the pieces I would hit on when I think about what we're looking for.
And I think, my last question is that, I think that mission and that tag is so meaningful that now and forever, is this idea of that differentiation and really making things better, democratizing technology, as you said. I mean, what can we expect to see from Lenovo? I mean, are you living it? A lot of companies talk about it. Are you guys living it? Or what should we be watching for? I'm not asking for any trade secrets here, what's coming, but I mean, how are you really going to differentiate that? Are you excited?
I mean, I'm super excited about it. I think we'll continue on the journey that we have of having this incredibly wide portfolio of PCs, tablets, smartphones, monitors, accessories, software, and services, I think is at the center of a lot of what we see moving forward. I think, things like augmented and virtual reality continue to be incredibly important. Collaboration. We've just talked about, how do you collaborate from home? How do you collaborate at work? From our perspective, we think of it almost, Trevor, from the pocket to the cloud. When you look at all of the different services and solutions and products that we bring to bear, our goal is to really turn that vision of smarter technology for all into the deliverables that we put together for customers, whether it's the experience in our gaming products, the Legion products that we have, whether it's our, yoga brand, whether it's ThinkPad, all of those kinds of things deliver a unique experience to our customers. And I would say we continue to differentiate ourselves against that and against what we see as customer need, and how you can use technology to transform those experiences. So I'll stop there because I see that Pearl is with us, and I think she's going to give us the
The orchestra is playing. If this was the Oscars, the orchestra would be playing, right, Pearl?
Exactly. I don't want to kick you off, but you both shared so many great insights. Really appreciate you both for joining us today. Emily, I particularly liked that you were talking about how it's about choice, not chance, owning up to it and tuning into the choices you make. Love that. But I hope you both join us again soon.
Thank you so much. Thanks for having us.